I was an independent journalist 6 months ago. I took an internship to write about rehabilitation programs at a maximum security facility. I thought it would be a good story, something to show how people can change. But what I found was beyond anything I expected. The place was isolated. The concrete walls felt like they were closing in on me. Barbed wire towered above, always reminding me where I was. I worked night shifts. The fluorescent lights flickered, making the sterile environment even creepier. On my first night, I heard a tapping sound. It was rhythmic and odd. I thought it was just an inmate with a nervous habit. But I couldn't shake off the feeling that it was meant for me. I tried to focus on my work, but the tapping was constant. The next day, it got louder. Then came the screams. They were muffled and came at strange hours. Each time, my heart raced. It felt like something was trying to grab my attention. I couldn't ignore it. As weeks went by, I noticed shadows lurking at the edge of my vision. Empty cells seemed to breathe, like they were alive. I found notes pushed under my office door. They were short and creepy, making my skin crawl. I asked my colleagues about them, but they avoided my questions. Their eyes darted away, as if they knew more than they said. They told me it was just stress. I thought they meant work stress. Maybe I was just imagining things. One night, the screams grew louder. I couldn't take it anymore. I had to know what was happening. I crept close to one cell and listened. The tapping returned, but now there were whispers too. They didn't make sense. I felt cold, my pulse racing. The shadows seemed thicker, heavier. I was scared. Eventually, I stumbled upon a hidden room. It was small and dark, filled with dusty files. Each paper detailed inmates not found in any official records. My hands shook as I flipped through them. What was this place hiding? I felt like I was being watched, and the air felt heavy around me. I knew I needed to leave, but my feet wouldn't move. Then I found one last file. I started reading, but as I did, I felt a presence behind me. It was cold and overwhelming. I turned quickly, heart pounding. No one was there, just darkness. Again I heard those whispers. I didn't want to listen. I finished my 6 months without answers. I had discovered nothing concrete, but felt a deep tension in that place. I truly believed something sinister was hiding in those walls. Now, even 6 months later, I still hear the tapping sometimes. I wake up at night, and it's there. I can't tell whether it was real or just my mind playing tricks. But the facility haunts me. I can't erase those sounds, those whispers. I left without closure, and that bothers me the most. I had hoped that leaving the facility would bring me peace. Instead, I was still plagued by nightmares, echoes of tapping and whispers creeping into my every thought. Days turned into weeks, but the fear refused to fade. I couldn't forget the weight of those shadows, the unexplainable tension that filled the air. One evening, I decided to confront it all head-on. I called my editor, asking for any leads on the facility or its past. I needed something, anything to make sense of what I experienced. Surprisingly, she mentioned a former inmate who had come forward with chilling stories about the place. They say he knows things, she told me. He has been trying to warn people. My heart raced. This was my chance. I arranged to meet him at a small diner on the outskirts of town. The place smelled of old coffee and fries. When I arrived, I spotted him sitting in a corner booth. He was tall, with deep-set eyes and an intensity that unnerved me. As I approached, I felt the weight of his gaze. I introduced myself and explained my connection to the facility. His reaction was instant. "You shouldn't have gone there," he said, his voice wavering. "You might not be free yet." My stomach twisted. "What do you mean? I left months ago." He leaned in closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "There are things in that place. Things they don't want you to know. They watch. They don't let go." I felt a chill crawl down my spine. I pressed him for details. He began to recount eerie tales of rooms where the screams never stopped, of shadows that followed, of whispers that led inmates to madness. It sounded like a horror movie, but he spoke with such conviction. "It's worse than you imagine. They're still there, waiting." Suddenly, the diner's lights flickered, and a loud crash echoed from the kitchen. Startled, I jumped. When I looked back, the man was gone. The booth was empty, but a single note lay there, scrawled in messy handwriting. "They know you." I stared at it, heart hammering in my chest. Panic welled up inside me. Had I made a mistake by coming here? I left the diner, the air around me feeling thick and hostile. The tapping started again, that night, steady and rhythmic, just like before. But this time, it wasn't just a noise. It felt like a message. I lay in bed, paralyzed by fear and confusion, trying to convince myself it was just a figment of my imagination. Then, the whispers returned, clearer than ever. "You have to listen." That's when I saw it. A figure standing at the edge of my room, shrouded in darkness. My heart raced, and every instinct told me to run, but my body wouldn't move. Just then, my phone buzzed. A message lit up the screen. It was from an unknown number. "You're not alone anymore." I didn't know who sent it or what it meant, but I felt the walls closing in. Something was coming for me, and it felt closer than ever. The next morning, I woke up feeling drained. The night had been restless, filled with dreams that flitted between reality and nightmare. I stumbled out of bed, still grappling with the feeling of being watched. Each creak of the floorboards sent a shiver down my spine. I opened my laptop, hoping to do some research on the former inmate I had met. I typed his name into the search bar, but nothing relevant came up. Just vague news articles about the facility's troubled past. My frustration grew. I needed more. I needed to find him. After some digging, I found an online forum dedicated to discussing the facility. Posts ranged from testimonies of experiences to wild conspiracy theories. I spent hours scrolling through them, my heart racing as I read chilling accounts of similar tapping sounds and whispers. One entry caught my eye. It mentioned a woman who had gone missing shortly after she left the facility. Her name was Emma, and the details were eerily familiar. The post claimed that those who had visited the facility often carried something back with them, an unseen presence that wouldn't let go. Not wanting to believe it, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was connected to me. Suddenly, my phone buzzed again. Another message from the unknown number. "You can't ignore them." I felt a wave of nausea hit me. Was this some sick joke? I wanted nothing more than to shove my phone into a drawer and forget it all. Instead, I felt compelled to reply. "Who are you?" A moment passed before my phone vibrated with a response. "Someone who knows the truth." Anger flared. I wanted answers, not cryptic texts. But there was a part of me that was terrified to dig deeper. What truth was hiding in the shadows? I grappled with my instincts, weighing fear against the burning curiosity. Finally, I typed back, "Meet me. I need to know." I didn't expect a reply so soon, but seconds later, my screen lit up again. "Tonight. Old warehouse by the river." My heart raced. I had seen that warehouse before, a crumbling structure that stood abandoned, heavy with secrets. I had passed by it countless times and felt a cold chill every single visit. Still, I couldn't back down now. As night fell, an uneasy anticipation gripped me. I drove through the darkness, the beam of my headlights slicing through the shadows. Thoughts raced as I approached the warehouse. What if it was a trap? What if I wasn't alone? I parked and stepped out of the car, my breath visible in the cold air. Each step echoed in the stillness. I made my way to the entrance, heart pounding. The door creaked open with a slow groan. The darkness inside seemed to pulse. Just as I took a step in, a noise echoed from within. A scraping, like nails on concrete. I hesitated, my instincts screaming at me to run, but I pressed on. And then I saw it. A figure in the distance, barely illuminated by the light from the entrance. "You came," it said, voice raspy and familiar. I froze. It was him, the inmate. But what had he brought with him? Before I could turn to flee, the door slammed shut behind me. The darkness swallowed me whole. In that moment, I realized I was not safe. They were here. I took a shaky breath, my pulse racing as I stared into the dim void. "What have you done?" I managed to choke out, trying to keep my voice steady. The inmate stepped closer, his features becoming clearer in the flickering light. "I didn't bring anything," he said softly. But they did. Panic ricocheted inside me. "Who?" I demanded. The weight of the air thickening around us felt suffocating. I inched back, planning my escape, but he raised a hand. "Listen, you don't understand. They want to communicate," he said, eyes darting around, as if expecting something to emerge from the shadows. "They want you to know the truth." Before I could process his words, a loud thud echoed from behind me. I turned abruptly, every instinct screaming at me to flee. The room felt alive, shadows dancing along the walls as whispers crawled into my ears. "Who are they?" I asked, dread pooling in my stomach. He shook his head, his expression a mix of fear and desperation. "They're not here to hurt you. They only want to tell you what happened." The tapping returned, louder now, rhythmic and persistent. I wanted to bolt, but I felt rooted in place. Another shadow shifted in the corner of my vision. I squinted, straining against the dark. An icy chill swept through the room, and the inmate's face twisted in panic. "Don't look at them," he shouted. The urgency in his voice jolted me. In that moment, I caught a glimpse of something pale, an outstretched hand fading into the ether. My heart dropped. "Look, you need to leave. Now." He stepped closer, but the shadows seemed to ripple, curling around his feet. He was anchored in place. I felt an invisible force push me back, my gut twisting. I stumbled, and as I regained my balance, I caught sight of a flicker along the wall's images. Faces of people, each twisted in agony, leaking into the darkness, their mouths moving silently. I gasped. "What is this?" "They're the ones," he whispered, voice shaking. Emma was one of them. She was trying to get out. I racked my brain. I remembered the post, her name carved into my thoughts. A missing person's mystery that had burrowed into my mind. What happened to her? They mark the ones who escape, the ones who know too much. You need to leave before they decide you're next. A wave of urgency washed over me. I turned, my instincts finally kicking in. I charged toward the heavy door, desperation fueling me. But it wouldn't budge. I pulled on the handle, panic rising as the shadows began to close in around us. "No!" I screamed. They crowded closer, drawing nearer. Just as I felt the coldness creeping over my skin, a strong hand gripped my shoulder. "Look at me," the inmate urged, his eyes wide with intensity. "You have to listen." That's when I saw it, a glint on the concrete floor. A glimmering piece of metal. A key? My heart raced again, a renewed hope battling against fear. "Find it," he shouted, "before they take you." I lunged for the key, fingers trembling as I scooped it up. As I turned to unlock the door, shadows swarmed around us. The whispers crescendoed into a cacophony, drowning out my thoughts. I threw myself against the door, fumbling to insert the key. Would it work? Would I escape, or would I join the lost souls trapped inside this nightmare? The door rattled, the shadows clawed at me, but with a final twist, it clicked open. The door swung wide, and I was met with the outside air like a burst of sunlight, but then I looked back at him. He was still there, swallowed by the dark, stuck in a prison of his own making. "Come," I shouted. "No, go," he screamed, a plea mixed with despair. I hesitated for only a moment. I had to decide. I stepped through the doorway into the night, feeling the relief of the cool air wash over me. But as I ran, the truth gnawed at me. I was free, but at what cost? I didn't look back. The shadows behind me shifted, whispering secrets only I could hear. I stumbled into the cool night air, gasping as my lungs drank in the fresh oxygen. The shadows of the facility loomed behind me, but I forced myself to run. My heart thundered in my chest, and with every step, I felt the weight of what I had just escaped. I darted down the empty street, trying to shake off the images of tortured faces that had filled the dark room. Emma, why did her name echo in my mind? The thought hung over me like a storm cloud, threatening to pull me back into that nightmare. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and I nearly jumped out of my skin. Heart racing, I fumbled to pull it out. It was a message from my best friend, Mark. "Where are you?" I stared at the screen, debating whether to respond. Did I even want to tell him where I'd been? I just needed to put distance between myself and that prison. But as I pressed my thumb against the screen to type, a second message popped up. "Come over now. Can't explain, but you need to be here." Conflicted, I looked over my shoulder. The shadows seemed to retreat, but still lurked at the edges of my vision. My gut twisted again, warning me not to trust my own instincts. I sent a quick reply, letting Mark know I was on my way. The streets were eerily quiet as I jogged toward his house. The moon cast a ghostly light, illuminating the way. I tried to focus on the familiar buildings, pushing aside the panic that still clawed at my mind. I had broken free, but the fear persisted. When I finally arrived at Mark's door, I knocked frantically, glancing around as if the shadows might re-emerge. After what felt like an eternity, he opened the door, looking frazzled. "What happened?" Without waiting for a response, Mark pulled me inside and closed the door behind me, bolting it shut. "I saw the news about that place. It's a nightmare, they say." "What?" I managed, my voice trembling. "What about it?" Mark looked visibly shaken. "The escape, they were saying people go missing from there, and it's not just the inmates. Some people are disappearing, friends of those inside." I felt sick. I had barely escaped, But what did that mean? I have to go back, I exclaimed suddenly. I need to find out what's happening. I need to help Emma. Are you insane? He said, stepping back. You can't go back there. You just got out. But the thought of Emma, trapped like the inmate had said, gnawed at me. I had seen the torment on her face in those shadowy images. I couldn't just leave her there, a victim of the dark. I can't just do nothing. Then everything went dark. The power flickered and died, plunging us into shadows. My breath caught in my throat. Mark? I called. I don't know what is going on. He shouted, but his voice was swallowed by the darkness. I fumbled to pull out my phone for light, but it had died. The air felt heavy, the atmosphere suffocating. Something's wrong. I yelled, panic surging. Then, in the pitch black, I heard it, a soft tapping, like nails against wood. My skin erupted in goosebumps, and I knew the shadows had followed me. I whispered a quick prayer and took a deep breath. Whatever it was coming for me. But I wouldn't run this time. I had to face it. The tapping grew louder, sending dread coursing through me. I squinted into the thick darkness, searching for something, anything that could explain the noise. Mark, I shouted again, but I could only hear the echo of my voice in the silence responding to my fear. The fear of the unknown gripped me harder than before. Uncertainty churned in my stomach as I held my breath, waiting for whatever lurked in the shadows. Was it just the house settling? Or something far worse? In that moment, the tapping stopped. The silence hung heavy, almost mocking. I strained to see, but I was enveloped in blackness. I couldn't even tell if Mark was still standing next to me. Mark, I said, my voice trembling. Right here, he replied, barely above a whisper. His voice crackled with fear, and I wished I could touch him to ground myself. What the hell is going on? I don't know. My voice was thin. Something is in the house. We both stood still, frozen in a moment of shared terror. Just as I thought I might suffocate from the tension, I heard it again, a faint rustling sound, like fabric brushing against fabric. Whatever it was moving closer. Let us get to the front door, I said quietly. It made sense to escape while we could still hear one another. As we tiptoed across the room, I grasped Mark's arm, feeling the tension in his muscles. The shadows clung to us like an unwanted shroud. I could almost sense the presence lurking in the corners, watching us. I felt it then, a chill against my neck, as if someone were breathing down my back. Run, I shouted, and in that moment of adrenaline, we bolted. We stumbled our way through the dark, hands brushing against the wall to guide us. I could feel my heart pounding, fueling my legs to move faster till we reached the door, but it wouldn't budge. My fingers flew over the handle, twisting and pushing. It stuck. Mark. I could barely hear him over the sound of my own panic. Pull harder, he urged. I strained with all my might, and finally, the door creaked open. But it wasn't the outside world that greeted us. It was a figure, a silhouette standing just outside, silhouetted against the moonlight. Turn around, they barked. I could barely make out the face, but the eyes glinted in the moonlight like shards of ice. I inhaled sharply, just as a glinting knife caught my eye. Who are you? I asked, my voice quaking. I'm here for you, the figure said coldly. In that instant, I couldn't tell if I should run or stay, but it felt too late for our escape. Just as dread washed over me, the power flickered back on, bathing the room in harsh light. I blinked, disoriented, and there it was, more faces behind the figure, some familiar, some not. Emma stood among them, her frightened expression piercing through the fog of my own terror. That's when I realized the nightmare wasn't over. I stood frozen in the doorway, my mind racing. Emma's presence, along with the others, sent a fresh wave of dread crashing over me. What were they doing here? I had come to believe we were alone, trapped with whatever terror was haunting this place. Emma, I yelled, desperate for reassurance. What is happening? She asked, panic lacing her voice. Her eyes darted between me and the figure outside. The glint of the knife was more pronounced now, the light piercing through the darkness that had engulfed our home moments earlier. Do you know him? I motioned toward the looming form. Emma shook her head, her breath hitching as she took a small step back. I just got here. They just appeared. My heart dropped. Who are they? I asked, turning to face the crowd of faces now gathering around the figure. They're friends, the figure said, his voice steady, almost comforting despite the knife. We're all friends here. Something about that word twisted my insides. Friends. The way he said it felt dangerous. I caught Mark's eye, and we exchanged a look filled with unspoken questions. We had to break free before things escalated. Get inside, the figure ordered, motioning with the knife. We wouldn't want anyone getting hurt, would we? I felt Mark's hand squeeze mine. But he didn't seem ready to trust anyone, especially not this man who wielded a knife with such easy confidence. I stepped back, searching for a way out, for some hint of how to navigate this madness. Then came a sharp sound, like a growl, echoing from deep inside the house. The group jolted, their attention drawn to the darkness that loomed behind us. What was that? Emma gasped, eyes wide with fear. Leave, the figure commanded, his voice hardening. You don't want to find out. Before I could process what was happening, something darted from the shadows, a blur of movement that sent chills racing down my spine. My instincts kicked in, and I pulled Mark closer. We have to go? I hissed. Where? Mark replied, panic rising in his voice. Anywhere but here. Backed against the doorframe. We needed a plan, but I could barely think straight. The faces behind the figure weren't reassuring. They seemed frozen, as if waiting for some cue to spring into action. I could sense a danger I couldn't name, an energy vibrating through the air. Just let us go. I pleaded, desperation creeping into my voice. The figure smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Not yet. The night is just beginning, and you're part of it now. The growl echoed again, louder this time, filling every crevice of the house. The ground felt like it was shifting beneath us. I could see it now, just at the edge of the light, a shadow distorted and undefined, creeping toward the threshold. That's when I saw it. I whispered, my breath catching. From the dark corner of the room, something stepped forward. It wasn't human, not entirely. Its form twisted and shifted, blurring the line between flesh and nightmare. My stomach dropped as I realized. We weren't just trapped with the figure, we had awakened a darkness that had been waiting for us all along. And just like that, the true horror began. The shadow slid forward, its edges flickering like a candle fighting against the wind. My heart raced. I clutched Mark's hand tighter, silently praying for a way out. What is that? Emma gasped, backing away as if the mere sight could burn her. The figure outside remained impassive, a smile grazing his lips, clearly enjoying our fear. That, my dear, is what we brought you here for, he said, glancing back at the creature that had emerged. I could feel my mind teetering on the brink of panic. I didn't want to ask what he meant, but I needed to understand what was happening. Why? I barely managed to say, my voice shaking. Because, he continued, his voice almost soothing, you need to see what you're dealing with. The darkness isn't just a threat, it's a part of who you are now. Embrace it. A growl erupted from the creature, sending vibrations through the floor. My instincts screamed at me to run, but we were trapped. The only exit was our looming captor, the door, and whatever that thing was now standing defiantly inside our home. Please, just let us go, I pleaded again, this time louder, desperation clawing at my chest. I could feel the darkness closing in, a heavy blanket that pressed down, suffocating. You think you can leave? The figure replied, tilting his head slightly. Leaving isn't an option for you anymore. You're a part of this game, just like it or not. He gestured behind him, where more figures began to emerge, their faces a flat canvas of indifference that I caught sight of Mark, his eyes wide with terror, and it jolted me from my paralysis. We need to move, I hissed, pulling him backward. There has to be a way out. Suddenly, the creature lunged, a swift, terrifying motion that sliced through the air. I instinctively ducked, dragging Mark down with me. Get down, I cried as chaos erupted. The others were screaming now, panic breaking the silence that had clung to us moments before. I dared to glance up. The creature had shifted once again, its form elongating, taking on a more human shape, but there was something grotesque about it, its eyes glowing an unnatural shade. We're not alone, I realized, the thought crashing over me like a wave. The others weren't just spectators, they were a part of this madness too. Fight or flight, the figure said, his smile sharp. Choose wisely. That moment felt like a trigger. I had to make a choice. I pulled Mark harder, urging him to follow me as I lunged for the shadows that seemed slightly more alive than before. Just then, I spotted an open door at the far end of the hall, barely swinging on its hinges. Over there. I pointed. We can get out. Mark nodded, hope flickering in his eyes. But before we could make a break for it, the figures advanced, blocking our path, their bodies shifting in the low light as if they were made of smoke. Don't let them escape. Keep them here, the figure commanded. A surge of adrenaline flooded my veins. I didn't know how, but I had to reach that door. The growl echoed again, now louder and more menacing, merging with the chaotic rhythm of our heartbeats. Everything was a blur. The darkness closing in around us now felt more like a living entity. And then, just as I thought we were trapped once more, I felt something brush against my side, something icy, electrifying. I was about to turn and face the unknown when Mark shouted, "Look out!" I spun around, and that's when I saw it. Something was behind me. Not just the creature, but something far worse, a face emerging from the shadows, familiar yet distorted. I froze. But it was too late. The nightmare had just begun. The face leered at me, the features twisted in a way I couldn't comprehend. Recognition crept in, but so did dread. It was someone I once knew, someone I cared about. My breath hitched. No, it can't be you. The figure before me grinned wider, its smile now a cruel mockery. "Hello, Alex," it rasped. "Did you miss me?" I stumbled back, dragging Mark with me. His grip on my hand was firm, but I could sense the panic in him too. This wasn't just a nightmare. It was a twisted reimagining of our lives. "What is happening?" Emma shouted, her voice breaking through the confusion. I could barely answer, my mind racing. The horrors in front of me were too much to process. The creature at my side raised a clawed hand, and suddenly the shadows around it thickened. It was as if the darkness had ears and eyes, waiting for the command to strike. The other figures moved closer, still a part of the same hypnotic dance. I felt their cold stares fixated on us. "This is all a game," the figure called Alex said, stepping forward. "You didn't expect to escape so easily, did you? You've been summoned here for a reason." A new wave of terror swept through me, but something inside ignited. "Summoned? For what?" I managed to spit out, my voice unwavering despite my fear. The creature laughed, a dry rasp that echoed in the hall. "To confront your darkness. It's the only way out." Mark squeezed my hand, and for a moment, I saw determination in his eyes. "We fight back," he said quietly, glancing at the figures slowly edging toward us. "Right?" "Yes. We can't let them take us," I replied, my heart racing with newfound resolve. We'd come too far, faced too much. I wasn't going to let a figment of my past or its grotesque siblings hold us hostage. Suddenly, the floor vibrated, rattling under the urgency of our decision. The figures paused, their attention drawn toward the door I had spotted earlier. It beckoned me, almost alive, like a way out of this nightmare. "Now, we make a run for it," I shouted, and without waiting for a response, I sprinted towards the door, adrenaline fueling my every step. Mark followed closely, and as we dashed past Alex, I stole a glance at the creature. Its eyes glinted sadistically, but I no longer felt its pull. The door loomed closer, swinging wildly on its hinges. I could hear shouts from behind, the figures mobilizing, but I focused on that threshold. It promised freedom, a return to something normal. Then a gust of cold wind whipped through as we reached the archway, making the shadows swirl chaotically. Just as I stepped through, I heard a chilling cry from Alex. "You cannot escape your fate." I stumbled into the next room, my heart pounding, only to find myself in a dimly lit corridor lined with doors. "What is this place?" I gasped, looking for a sign, anything to guide us. Mark's face was pale, and he shook his head in disbelief. "I don't know, but I feel we're still being hunted." A sudden sound caught my attention. The door we had just burst through slammed shut, sealing off our escape. Panic surged back as I pressed my ear against it, desperate to listen for what was on the other side. And then it hit me. We need to find the way out, but there's something more. We're not alone in here. Someone else could be trapped. That realization turned my stomach. I had thought we were running from darkness. But what if, instead, we were stepping deeper into it? The fear settled heavily in my chest as I wondered what other horrors this facility might hide. That I turned to Mark, our eyes locking, both of us understanding the weight of the choice before us. As I whispered, "We can't leave anyone behind." And with that, we pressed deeper into the unknown, knowing the real nightmare was just beginning. The corridor stretched endlessly, lit by flickering overhead bulbs that cast eerie shadows on the walls. Mark and I exchanged hesitant glances, the weight of our decision heavy on our shoulders. "Which way?" he asked, voice quiet but steady. I could feel the pull of fear washing over me again, but I forced it down. "We need to find anyone who might still be trapped. They 1T let us go easily." Mark nodded, though uncertainty lurked in his eyes. Together, we crept through the hall, our footsteps echoing in the quiet. Doors led to darkened rooms, their contents obscured by a suffocating shroud of shadows. I felt eyes on us, but every time I turned, there was nothing but darkness and emptiness. Just as panic threatened to take over, I spotted a faint light seep through a doorframe, illuminating the edges of what lay within. "This way," I whispered, leading Mark toward the door. I turned the knob slowly, praying it would open. It creaked loudly, and I winced, half expecting it to awaken whatever malevolence lay dormant in the darkness. Inside, the light flickered as if struggling against the shadows. I stepped in carefully, scanning the room filled with decaying furniture and remnants of life. Once lived there were scattered papers, a dusty chair tipped on its side, like a forgotten memory. But it was the sight of the figure slumped against the far wall that tugged at my heart. "Is that?" I breathed, taking a cautious step closer. It was a woman, her appearance gaunt, eyes wide as if she'd seen too much. "Emma?" I called, reaching out for her gently. She raised her head, the recognition dawning slowly in her eyes. "You found me," she whispered, voice cracked like brittle glass. "I thought I was lost." "We're not leaving you here," Mark said, moving in beside me. "Can you stand?" With a groan, she pushed herself upright using the wall for support. I glanced around, unease settling back in as shadows danced along the corners. "We have to hurry," I urged as I helped her stand. "We might not have much time." We moved carefully, making our way back toward the corridor. The atmosphere felt charged, crackling with a tension that threatened to explode. The door behind us slammed shut. I could hear it. The unmistakable tapping started again, echoing ominously as if the shadows weaved deeper into our minds, trying to grasp hold. Suddenly, the walls began to vibrate. The entire building felt alive, unnerving shivers crawling along my skin. "We have to go?" I shouted, pushing Emma between Mark and myself. The tapping turned into a relentless rhythm, gaining speed like a sinister drumbeat in a dark symphony. As we rushed down the hallway, we heard the growling again, the low rumble vibrating under the floorboards, as if the very foundation was reacting to our presence. Glancing over my shoulder, I caught a glimpse of movement, a figure darting after us. I felt my heart pounds against my chest. "Faster," I urged, adrenaline surging through me. We barreled through a series of closed doors, some ajar, others locked, but there was no time to check. We pushed on, fear driving us forward. The corridor twisted, leading us into a larger room, an empty space lined with more doors. I could hear whispers wrapping around us, a cacophony of pleading voices rising and falling in a ghostly chorus. Emma gasped, voice trembling. "We're not alone, they're everywhere." "Stay close," Mark shouted as we pressed against the wall, scanning for a way out. A shadowy figure loomed closer, its shape morphing as it crept toward us. We stumbled back, panic igniting in our chests. Racing against time, Mark pointed toward a door at the far end that stood slightly ajar. "There, let us go." We dashed toward it as the shadows swirled like a tidal wave. I could feel the coldness wrapping around me, pulling me back. With one final push, we burst into the next room, slamming the door behind us. Inside, dim light flickered, and the air felt fresher, but still buried in uncertainty. Another figure emerged from the darkness, eyes narrowed, filled with recognition. "You made it." It was the former inmate, the one who had warned me. "But you have to leave now." "What are you doing here?" I demanded, my voice tight with urgency. "I came to find you," he said, glancing over his shoulder nervously. "They're coming. We can't stay." "But what about Emma?" I shouted, panic threatening to overtake me again. He looked at her, brow furrowing. "We have to go. She is not safe here." "No," I said, holding Emma's hand tightly. "We're not leaving her." The pounding returned, the rhythmic sound crashing against our ears, rising to a fevered pitch. It was unbearable. With urgency, he gripped my arms tightly. "You don't understand. If you stay, they'll take you, both of you. Trust me, this can't end here." I looked at Mark and Emma, our eyes connecting in shared fear and determination. We can't abandon anyone. We're stronger together. Suddenly, the shadows in the room thickened, swirling with ominous intent. I could see whispered figures gathering, the faces distorted, mouths moving silently pleading, perhaps engulfed by the very darkness we had encountered. Now, the inmate shouted, shoving us towards a different doorway that glimmered faintly in the dark. The pounding grew louder, rattling my bones. I hesitated but felt Emma squeeze my hand. Urging me forward, we surged into the other room, and just as I turned back to call for the inmate, the shadows grasped around him like claws, pulling him into the depths. His eyes widened in terror, mouth agape with a silent scream. "Go," he shouted, but it was too late. The shadows consumed him, along with any trace of light. Mark grabbed my arm, dragging me to keep moving. "We can't save him. We have to save ourselves." Tears burned in my eyes as I glanced back one last time, acknowledging the life we had witnessed and the darkness swallowing it whole. With resolve, we pushed forward, the whispers skimming through the air like a chilling breeze as the shadows lurked behind. Each door we passed offered neither solace nor safety, just endless possibilities filled with horror. "Keep going," I urged, each pulse of fear propelling us forward. Finally, the corridor forked, and I chose right, trusting my instinct. The world felt unstable, the shadows closing in, swallowing our voices as we pressed onward. "What if this leads us back?" Emma whispered, panic creeping into her tone. "It has to lead somewhere," I insisted, even though doubt threatened to suffocate me. As we pressed through a final door, the space opened into a cascading hall filled with light, a surreal contrast to the claustrophobic shadows we had navigated thus far. "You see?" Mark breathed, hope flickering in his eyes. But before I could respond, the tapping returned, louder and with urgency. A roar echoed behind us, vibrating through the air that a small window stood across the room, offering the promise of escape. "There," I pointed, heart racing. When we made our way toward it, the shadows surged behind us, rushing to reclaim their lost prey. We raced toward the closing gap, but the sensation of being watched pushed us faster. "Go," I shouted as we reached the window. Emma jerked backward, icy dread taking hold when a shadow clawed around her ankle. "Help!" she screamed, panic rushing through me. Adjusting quickly, Mark reached down to pull her free. Grabbing her hand, I felt my heartbeat thunder, pulling us away from the encroaching darkness. With a final heave, we stumbled past the threshold, pushing through the window and into the pale moonlight outside. I gasped as fresh air enveloped us. But when I turned back, I was met by a startling, hollow echo as the shadows struggled futilely against the light, stretching toward us with conflicted energy. Emma shakily crawled through, but as I pulled her next to me, I felt the weight of lingering darkness clinging to our hearts. I looked back one last time. The old facility stood still behind us, a broken monument of pain and secrets. Inside, I knew things still lurked, still whispered, still clawed. But I also felt our victory seep into the air. We had escaped, but at what cost? Breathless and shaken, I pulled both Mark and Emma closer. "Let us not look back," I said, heart still racing. As we stepped further into the night, I couldn't shake the unsettling feeling that we had only brushed against the true magnitude of what lay within that cursed place. Whether it was supernatural or manifested from the depth of despair, it didn't matter anymore. We had survived, but the echoes would remain, lingering in our thoughts. And I couldn't help but wonder, were we the last ones to escape? Why did it feel like the shadows were still with us? Each tapping noise reminded me of their presence, haunting my mind, whispering truths I wished I could forget. I had hoped for answers, but as the darkness lingered behind us, I could only anticipate what the future held, uncertain of what I would find, if anything at all.